Good morning, everyone. Rob Everly here, Chair of the Evolve community, and welcome to our final webinar of the year. And what an exciting year it's been! You'll see from our holding side there, it is the Christmas special, and we don't have a tree to decorate when we're online. So we have put some lovely baubles on our slides today. Our panel are also decorated out in their Christmas jumpers. You'll see mine here. Let's see if we can do this. There we go. So Christmas jumper. I have a Christmas penguin today. Sadly, it's being blocked out there. As promised, which I promised I would wear on uh, the last webinar which we ran. So today's webinar is on the subject of social events at conferences, improving our social events. We've got two panelists for you today, both very, very experienced event professionals, when we're going to deliver some advice and hopefully some great value for you. We've had a great number of registrations for this one, our best ever yet. So we will see who arrives as we progress over the next few minutes. A couple of housekeeping notes. As always, the session will be recorded. Please use the chat for comments, say hello to everybody, and use the Q&A to ask the panel questions. The webinar is very much improved with your questions. Otherwise, there's a bit of shooting in the dark going on. So as you go through, you think of questions or you want things to be discussed, please do put them in the Q&A, and we will do our best to answer them. So the rationale for today's session. So there are rumors that network and connection is becoming a much stronger pull factor to attend events, perhaps over and above content, which is a huge change given our mantra as event professionals for the last 20 years or so has been content is king. So if connections are so important to delegates, what can we do to help them facilitate that? As an events industry, we're notoriously bad at facilitating good networking. We tend to throw delegates in a darkened room with a warm glass of wine and expect them to just get on with it. But actually, a recent study, and we discussed this in the last webinar, there was a recent discussion on how networking is important to people, but they don't know how. A lot of people don't know how to network. So, um, are we really delivering value to our delegates and creating great experiences for them by doing that? Or, in other words, what can we do to improve things? So, as I said, we have brought together a couple of experts to talk to you on this subject. But first of all, two quick polls. And John, who's our event manager today, if you can pop the polls up, that'd be great. We have two quick polls for you. So the first, to what extent do you agree with the following statement? Social events are important to our delegates. Relatively simple question then. Anything from strongly agree to strongly disagree. We're really interested in your opinions there. And the second, to what extent do you include networking as part of your social events? It's interesting because social events can automatically be considered networking, but are they purposeful networking events, I guess, or are they just really just a social, just to let your hair down? And the answer's there again, a scale never up to always. You can continue responding to that poll over the next few minutes. We'll review the results of that once we've met our speakers. And on that note, our first speaker today is Adam Fillery, who's founder of the Professional Association of Networking. Good morning, Adam. Thanks so much for joining us. Adam is also founder of MESA, the Meetings Events Support Association, and he describes himself as the business events industry's tapas. He's run over 1,500 events. He's a former business analyst, software developer, and sales professional with over 30 years experience, and is now focused on helping event organizers improve networking and creating connections and events. Thanks so much for joining us today, Adam. Nice to see you.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. And I want to say happy near year to everybody because we're all planning for 2026.
Thank you. So Adam, what's the problem? This conversation started with you and I a year and a half ago at the meeting show when you made a very bold statement to me and said we're really bad at helping delegates network as an industry. So why do you think we need to improve our networking and social programs?
Well, I'll jump straight in with the moment we are in. We're seeing with younger folk more and more people unemployed. And I think there is job anxiety out there. So, a macro layer, I'd say we really are addressing the future of work by ensuring that we have the opportunity to connect. And I think we often also think of what we are not doing with people in these events. So I want to think of how I want someone to leave the room. I want someone to feel good at the moment they enter the room. So that facilitation piece, I think, is where we haven't been well practiced. I don't think there's any great engineering that's taken place to think through that journey of networking. And of course, every event is different, and outcomes and objectives are different. But we should be responsible for how people feel at the start and at the end of these, as we're going to go on to talk about, social gatherings.
Great, thank you very much. Sense of responsibility really important there. And I know from my own perspective, now I'm a bit older, I tend to network with the people that I know. I
Mm.
don't tend to put the energy into it that I used to. And as a, I guess, more experienced member of the events industry, that's something I can improve in, perhaps needs help to improve in that. So on our second speaker today, Emma Duffy, Head of Events from the Royal College of Paediatrics and Child Health. Thank you, Emma, for joining us today. It's lovely to see you. You have 25 years of meaningful mission. I love this. 25 years of meaningful mission-driven events across not-for-profit organizations and associations. Um, I, when I was writing this, I actually thought of you as you're the Mary Poppins of events, business events. You're a former co-chair of ABCO, the Associated British Professional Conference Organisers, and you're energized by helping people grow, which is lovely statement. From my own perspective, you're one of the most positive people in the events industry, and so thank you for joining us today. You run in our session last week when we were planning this. You said you run a lot of social events as part of your events program. What changes and expectations have you noticed from delegates in social events?
Thank you, Rob. Thank you for having me. Good morning, everybody. My Christmas jumper says Brussels sprouts on it, but I'm not sure you can see. I'm just going to stand out just because I want people
Lush.
to see my Christmas jumper.
I love
Um,
it.
um, I think there's a couple of things around expectations. I think accessibility is a really, really, really big one. You made a really good point earlier that when we organise a social event, we put people in a room and we give them a glass of something and we expect them to just kind of get on with it. That, for a huge number of people, is actually incredibly daunting, and it's daunting enough to stop them doing it, which in the profession that I work in, so I work with clinicians, I've always worked in medical associations, those networking opportunities are quite often the next step up on your career ladder. So who have you met? Where are the opportunities? Where are the roles? What's the training opportunity that I'm going to get? If we don't support people with neurodiversities to do that as well, we are really we're crippling people in that opportunity for networking. Um, I think food and drink is a really big thing. I think people really want value for money, and they no longer just expect a glass of warm wine or a bottle of beer. There are huge numbers of people out there who no longer drink for a huge number of reasons. And I think alcohol causes problems. I've just been looking at our revamping our event code of conduct, and as part of that, I've written in a whole section about the Workers' Protection Act. So as an employer, now I am responsible for ensuring taking demonstrable steps to ensure that sexual harassment and harassment does not happen at events, and that's my responsibility now, as an employer, as an event organizer. So I now have to think about the impact of alcohol in a lot of that as well. I think there's some real stuff around kind of accessibility and sort of food and drink and value for money. And I think there are some issues with venues around flexibility, around sort of alternatives to alcohol and dietary requirements, which is probably another webinar. But yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
actually, if so, for those who are listening today, we did actually run a webinar on food and beverage inclusivity a couple of months ago, and it's on the Evolve website. So if you go back, I think it was October's webinar, you'll be able to watch that there. And I would really recommend that because it was a very, very insightful webinar. But food and beverage is a very, very important part of our culture. To be fair, most cultures, but with more and more options, it's harder and harder to get right. And I know something which I know Emma, but I hope you don't mind me sharing. Both of us are very passionate about is choice at events, and we've both had a discussion last week about that some of our events seem to be going to vegan only food, which actually can be a turn off for some delegates, and it's really it is tricky trying to be inclusive, trying to be sustainable, but also trying to prove value to people in something which they often have to buy tickets for. Um, um, so before we go on to questions, sorry, just to remind the audience, please, if you have questions, please do submit them via the Q&A. We have some backup questions, so it's okay. We won't panic, but let's have a look at the poll results first of all. If you could pop those back up, John, that would be great. Thank you. So, firstly, the first question, I guess, to what extent do you agree with the following statement? Social events are important to our delegates. A couple of strong disagrees up there, which I think is really, really interesting. Mostly kind of agree and mostly strongly agree, which I guess goes along the the trend of what we'd expect for most of our events as associations. But I wonder, Adam, I'll come to you first. Any comments or thoughts on that first question?
Well, I mean, I think I'd love to know the reasons for strongly disagree. Yeah. I have to think to why someone might have ended up being negative towards it. Potentially it's their own experiences and maybe they've had good experiences doing things outside of that frame. I would also consider what makes the benchmark for good as well. So we could be talking about, has someone expressed themselves as having a good time and we just replicate that. But is there a glass ceiling? Could we be aiming higher? And would that then compel us to actually do a bit more and generate a bit more enthusiasm for why networking should be part of your thinking and modeling, and what could be great about it rather than what could be kind of what we expect. And I think when we talk about putting people into the room, to your point earlier about giving them a glass of wine, I sort of think of the analogy of parents giving their children away to a space for them to go play and just ushering them off, rather than thinking about how do we complement the room with our own presence and how do we get them around that room.
I think it'd be really, really interesting to kind of uncover those strongly disagrees. And actually, if whoever voted that, perhaps you'd like to put a comment in the chat, and you can do that anonymously to if you want to kind of give some background to that, because it's really interesting. And actually, from my own experience working with one particular client who we worked with probably four years ago, they had a wine and cheese party as their main networking event. And we did have quite an in-depth discussion with them about the inclusivity of that event, because actually it was the members seemed to like it, or I would say the vocal members seemed to like it, and particularly the board. But honestly, if you either don't drink, which is more and more people don't drink at business events now. My own experience is for my own personal, I like to have a choice. I don't drink at all business events, so I want to make sure that I've got a good alternative. But we want to do that anyway, and Sorry, I'm chucking you because I've just seen the response at the top from Joe S, who said they didn't strongly disagree. It's just they meant strongly agree but chose the wrong thing. That's perhaps our fault for putting them in a perhaps not the right order. But thank you for that, Joe. Um, um, so and this, if you're lactose intolerant or you don't eat cheese or you just don't like cheese, it's not going to be an event which you want to go to. And surely we want to design events which bring as many people as might want to them uh, as possible, so they don't miss out on potential benefits. And to what the second question was, to what extent do you include networking as part of your social events? Mostly, sometimes, often, always. Emma, I think that's pretty much what we expected as part, given the audience today.
Yeah, I would say so. I when I was thinking about our questions for today, it made me go back and look at my most recent big annual conference, so big multi-stream medical education conference, essentially. It's the second biggest reason that my delegates come to conference is networking, and we do that littered across the event. So we have, and we our social events are tailored as well. So we have a seniors lunch, we have a trainees drinks reception, we have a welcome drinks reception, we have SIG dinners. So our networking and our social events are very much tailored. They are not just a one size fits all. But I think it's really important. I think particularly if you go to a conference on your own, we've all been to something where we turn up and we don't know if we're going to know anybody. So actually that sort of networking element, which is another good reason of why we should do some more structured networking, I think. Like, I know this is kind of Adam's sort of absolute kind of, his sort of passion. There are times when it fills me with slight dread, I have to say, like I don't necessarily want to be structured in my networking. But actually, the more I think about it and the more things I go to where I don't maybe know as many people, actually that structured networking can be a really important part of those social events. Yeah, I think we're all social people, aren't we? I think, I hate to use the word COVID because we seem to use it as a lot of excuses for a lot of things. But we all changed a lot in COVID, and I think now we really want to be back in touch with people. And so I think having it as part of our conferencing and other sort of medical events is really important. So yeah, even just doing something little is always good as well. Doesn't always have to
But
be.
yeah, I think so. But I think to be fair to us as well, I mean, if we're an association, we're running one big event a day, a year, sorry, not one big event. God, no, not one big event a day, please. No, never. But I think that if we're running one large event our communities every year, it's still relevant to talk about post-COVID because those trends aren't necessarily easily identifiable because everything changed. It seems that everything changed from 21 to 22, again to 23, again to 24, and we're only now getting in. I feel, and it is a feeling. I've not done any research on this, but I feel now we are getting into more of a pattern. We have more measurable
Mhm.
data on which to make our decisions. Um, I'm going to actually come to a question. I want to ask Adam this. Given we've been talking about facilitated networking, what is it? What are we actually talking about? And what does best practice look like for networking at conferences?
So this is one of those topics that if you had me for 10 hours, I wouldn't take a breath in between. So let me try and get to the key point.
Noted.
First
You've
of all,
got a
let's
couple of
look at
minutes.
yeah, okay, a couple of minutes. If we look at the history of networking, I think it's broadly been in the large events lip service. That's been my distinction over the years.
Okay.
I'm the one that decided to start interviewing people about their networking experiences about 7 years ago. Partly because of my own, and I suffer like anyone else from not so much anxiety and nerves, but I would call it cognitive imbalance. And the cognitive load of networking to some is almost insurmountable. So we have to sort of take a step back. Who's not in the room? Because for years they've been put off. There's already disparity over those that enjoy it, those that are uncomfortable in it, but a whole bunch of people that are not actually utilizing networking as a way to sort of broker themselves into the room, both socially and professionally. So, we have to think about curation and facilitation. And to Emma's point, and I think this also speaks to a word we hear a lot in our industry quite recently around the word hyper personalization, which is for me a comedy word because I think it's incredibly hard to achieve. And people are making it sound like it's just around the corner with a little bit of AI. Well, I'm sorry, but if you don't ask someone how they are on that day, you will not be able to prescribe to them something that's suitable for them. So if you're having a difficult day, it's been a heavy day, you're uncomfortable for whatever reason, it could be health, it could be the position of the room, you might be new to that room, then we have to adapt that room to different types of people in different modes and how they feel cognitively. We don't really ask that. So when Emma was saying about what to do and what's the room made up of, it's not necessarily all in on structured, but it can be that you can create areas of structure, topical conversation area, thinking about what you publish and what people are ready to deliver when they get there. If there's two or three poignant questions that maybe later in the conference or earlier in the conference someone is going to be talking about, can you get that conversation to evolve from, oh, they're talking about something important on stage, rather than how do I feel about the topic they're going to speak about? So if your networking is earlier, start to utilize that as part of the entire event experience. But you can project it, it can be on screens, it could be reminders, it could be pop-ups, depending on the technologies you're using. So are we up 2 minutes yet?
You're all right, Adam. You're
Brain
okay.
running away.
You're okay. I think that's great. And this, just to focus on one thing you said there, which is this idea of hyper personalization. So for those that aren't aware, there's now a discussion in parts of the events industry about the hyper personalization will become. Not, don't think it's here yet, but a more and more. Oh, I can't speak. I'm sorry. A more and more important part of an individual's experience and events. And that's related to this idea that experience will start to become more important than content at events, based on around the idea that we work more and more remotely and human contact is important to us. We've got our first audience question. Thank you very much from Gemma Mulder. Gemma asks, are post-conference social events at pubs an absolute no-no these days? Emma, what do you think?
Oh gosh. I don't think they're a complete no-no. I think they have to be a little more structured than just saying we're all going to this pub. Um, yeah, I don't know. Are they a complete no-no? Maybe they are. I think there needs to be some structure around them. I think there needs to be a risk assessment around them. I think there needs to be expectation settings around behavior. And, it's still very much that thing, isn't it, where, just because the social event doesn't happen in the same.
And we've lost Emma just like that. So we'll ask Emma to come back to that question a bit later when we get her back. Adam, what do you think about pubs?
Probably as a bias, I would say anywhere but a pub. But I have seen events where the post-event engagement is quite good because it's tailored towards an end of event tail off. But if you're trying to create something, I don't think it's necessarily the right environment to curate into. Partly because how loud is it going to be when you get there? Are you going to be partitioning that audience? In which case, why a pub at all? Unless it's got a bar, in which case, again, that's just another environment. Call it what you like, whether it's a pub or not. Yeah, I think there's an inherent danger of the people that you'll end up bumping into. And is it meant to be? Because a pub is easy, or should we be looking harder at the choices we make? I think it's often been too easy, like the Fox at Excel. It's just there. But it does mean that people are comfortable. And that word is incredibly important. What makes someone comfortable? I know where it is. I know where the toilets are. I know what to expect. So that I think is, you could say that some pubs are good at making you feel comfortable.
And yeah, I agree. I know for Evolve last year and also for this year, we are using a pub for the social event, but it's because we wanted to create a different environment, a more relaxing environment for people that wasn't a conference room. It's very difficult to create a relaxing environment in a conference venue. And at Excel, we kind of struggle for alternative options from big empty conference rooms. So that's why we've gone for that, but we are doing it in a way which makes sure there is equitable food and drink choices, controllable sound, and volume. So my own opinion is it's not. I don't think it's always inappropriate, but it does depend on your audience. Emma, welcome back.
I'm so sorry.
That's all right. Was there anything you wanted to add to what you were saying?
No, I was just going to be really boring and talk about risk assessments and things like that. So
Yeah, okay. All right, fine. Yes. Okay, good. So I think just going back to a point where Winnie made, thanks, Winnie. I think with some associations sort of slightly dated expectation around what social events should be, depending on typical attendee, members may have been around longer, perhaps, for example. So let's ask a really probably quite a controversial question, and I'm going to ask it in a controversial way. Is a gala dinner still fit for purpose?
well, I'll answer that one. Well, I'll start answering that one because it's exactly the conversation that I'm having at the moment. So, my conference chair is very, very fond of a sit down dinner. Ours are informal. There's no seating plan. There's no dress code. There are no speeches. So essentially, it is people sitting and sharing a meal together. What's really interesting is that our president this year decided he did not want a formal sit down dinner for his president's dinner because he said, I have to sit with 6 people, and I don't necessarily really want to sit with those 6 people. I want to meet every single person in the room. I want to have a conversation with every single person in the room. So he had a summer party instead, and he absolutely loved it. I believe they are not as inclusive. So our dinner tickets are quite expensive simply because of the nature of organising an event like that and the costs associated with it. So therefore, I know that a lot of our younger delegates don't come. A lot of people that are sort of attending the event on their own don't come, despite the fact we've put in sort of newbie drinks receptions, that kind of thing. I would really like us to think about doing something different. I just need to do a little bit of influence and persuasion about kind of the fact that it's okay to trial it and see what happens. I think so. I think they are appropriate in certain circumstances, but I think increasingly they are not, and they don't really allow people to network and socialize. So
Thank you.
I'd quite like to not organise gala dinners.
Adam, anything to add on that?
I think it's all very much the same. I think when you're talking about high ticket prices, you're also making that sound exclusive and elitist at times. I think the incumbents tend to sit and know what to do and how to behave. So I think protocol planning is something that maybe could go alongside what a dinner looks like when it's curated. I'm looking at large rooms. I've been to a few recently, and it's just an abundance of people sitting in often a darkish space. Maybe there's a stage. So I think we've got to work out how to please sponsors a lot of the time. And I think it's one of those things that is half expected that sponsors will be able to put their name up in lights, maybe a stage, maybe a presentation screen or 5. So what's the alternative to that makes them feel comfortable? And then equally, what's going to get those people to spend, let's say, more dwell time in the environment that you would class as let's say a social gathering, and that there would be the potential of more engagement with those brands. It's not about selling, it's about what messages do they want in that room, and what do they want the audience doing in that room? Is it a party atmosphere, or is it a bit of an extension to the conference itself? In which case, again, if you map the room, there could be an area for people that want to go deep into the night with a deeper discussion against the backdrop of, there's the bar. So as long as we've got a bit of flexibility in the model, I think you can account more people into the room. You can give them more opportunity, more options to have the evening they want. And let's face it, if you ask people, they don't always know what they want. But if you collect data and what people feel has been of value to them, you certainly will be able to help curate those environments better.
And I think understanding what people want is really important as well. And from my own experience, if I'm going to a dinner, fine. But actually, after dinner, I really want to sit and chat with people, have a drink. But actually, most of the time, we have what I call the dreaded disco, or the live band, which hopefully are good. And for me, because I have hearing loss, that's my worst environment because I can't hear anything that's going on. So for me, being able to go to an area which is quieter and just have a chilled out drink with people, I absolutely love that, and I get so much from it. But hey, that's my personal experience. I think the point is we need to rethink when we're thinking about something as formal as a gala dinner. We really need to think about our audience, whether that is right for the majority of them, not just what the president wants. And that's a really difficult discussion. I know how difficult that discussion is. Caroline Hembry's asked, can you give some ideas of how to create better delegate experience than just wheeling out drinks and canapes at the end of an event? Yes, probably. Adam.
Well, let's start with let's stand up a little bit, apart from the jumper. So there's a badge here, and we all get given some form of badge, whether we write our names on a sticker or we preclude that we're going to address the audience with, "Hey, this is what I do and this is who I work for." That's a very low, base to start from. But nevertheless, this is about hobbies and habits and things that I'm interested in. So whatever you use, conversation starters to me are an absolute. You should always have something that enables people to start the conversation. And I also think there's another way we can do this. I think when we say roll the room, how do you get movement from people sort of stagnating? So a gala dinner, you sit in a chair. So one way of rolling the room, we do this with my old association, the old mess of dinners. And we used to say, right, after the first course, you move. And sometimes that was a bit awkward because people just get up and start randomly moving around the room or go out for a cigarette or a vape. But that is a case of, how do we do it rather than should we do it? I think we should do it, generally speaking. Not always, but most of the time. And again, having areas that people can gravitate towards, really good signage of what they can expect in the room. But again, what are the protocols that people could expect? So yeah, there's lots of triggers. There's loads of ways to get people to have a conversation, priming it in advance, looking at what particular softwares can do. So I would say, when you're looking at the networking component, let's say, of this, think of the space they're in, try and visualize it, imagine, 50, 100,000 people, whatever you're planning for. The placements within that room, where would you want people to gravitate towards? And can you say, are they color zoned or are they just, A, B, and C? But what are you going to find in zone A? What would you find in zone B? Are you going to find your matches that you're looking for? And then pace. Pace is really important because, if I give you an analogy, I used to go greyhound racing with my late father, and he used to study the form, and he would look at whether a greyhound would come out of the traps fast. So let's say a typical extrovert, I'm not saying that's me, but someone that starts the conversation. So I think of myself as now an omnivore. I stand and look at that room and think, what version of me do I need to be to help this room evolve? And sometimes, I'll plug. Sometimes it's happening naturally. Everybody is into it. But if you look around the room, then you realize there are people that are not ready for it. Maybe again, cognitively, maybe they're new to the industry. Maybe they're just a little uncomfortable for whatever reason. So you can sort of play a role to then encourage those people. And you mentioned earlier, Rob, you gravitate towards people you know. I don't think that's a bad thing. Consolidating relationships is how we build over time, and that gains that longevity of trust and or belief, depending whether it's a sort of an ongoing pursuit rather than just somebody you feel comfortable alongside. And so actually thinking together, hey, I found somebody that I can talk to. How do you include somebody into that conversation? And that comes down to your mental presence in that room, keeping an eye open and standing open to the room rather than closing off. So simple things, but there's a number of them. It's obviously what we practice at Pan, but happy to go deeper, of course, anytime.
And I guess one thing which struck me from what you said, Dan, is this idea, which we've worked with a couple of times with a couple of events, of actually creating networking ambassadors in a social event. So a group of people who are just keeping an eye out, and just making sure that people are introduced and no one's standing there no one's kind of standing there on their own, or if they are standing on their own, that we check they're happy to stand there on their own, and that we're then actively helping in introductions. And actually that's a great potential role of your board, or your special interest groups. Normally, in my experience, boards expect a free ticket to your event, so make them work for it. And if they want to come,
one other little line here. I was talking to a very well-known organizer of an event that attracts, let's say, 10,000 people. And they were very assured about themselves and their role within networking. I think, as you were mentioning there, the incumbents, the people that have been doing this for a long time, they probably do have a network. They probably are comfortable meeting the same people. So they have to come out of that space in their head and say, what was it like when I last felt uncomfortable being introduced to a group of people? So that's a really strong tip for those executives to really just remodel. There's something called Shoshin, and it's a Buddhist mantra for beginner's mind. Reset yourself to think of nothing and nothing that you know and nothing that you expect. Walk into the room and feel like there's a chance for enlightenment, that somebody is not going to be talking about something you already know. Open that mindset to this is what people feel like when they have no clue what to expect. And that is then easier for you to start adapting to that room.
I love that we've just managed to bring in Buddhist mantras into the events industry. I think it's, as far as I'm concerned, that's the first, Adam, and you should be applauded for that. Thank you. Um,
Rob,
Emma,
can
yeah,
I
go
just
on.
mention some of the thing in relation to Caroline's questions, just some of the things that ABCO have introduced over the last couple of years, which is the sort of additional things that as a delegate you can go to. So ABCO Excellence Awards was in Manchester at end of last week, and they had a fantastic offering. Admittedly, it was the sort of afternoon before, but they did a sip and paint sort of social activity where you could go and you would paint a picture. And we've got these beautiful pictures on the ABCO website of these amazing bee pictures that people have painted. I know lots of people who use things like walking tours and Invisible Cities walking tours, or some legacy, so some volunteering with a local charity to bring people together so that they are doing something together. And if you can do that either as part of a sort of bigger social event or before a bigger social event, it does allow those connections to be made and people can then continue those conversations. So I think doing things is always sometimes much nicer as a kind of networking opportunity because you have a shared experience with somebody then. So I think somebody else has put a question in about sort of hints and tips for things on a small budget. I have really tiny budgets. Like I don't have huge amounts of money for any of my sort of social activities. So I look to try and do things that don't cost very much money, and I use the people around me. So I've just booked a magician, but it's the husband of a friend of somebody I work with, and he's like, "Can you pay for my dinner?" And I'll come and do it for nothing. So I think use the people around you and sort of fit what you've got into what you want to achieve. And I think it's just it's little things. They don't have to be massive budget, busting sort of exercises. But yeah, the sort of ask around, ask people that because you'll be really surprised at what skills and expertise people have that you don't necessarily know about.
That's great, Emma. And actually, you've answered one of our next questions about advice for organising great networking opportunities on small budgets. The only thing I would add to that, which I don't think we've talked about yet, is creating a sense of fun. If people
Mm,
are enjoying themselves with others, they will automatically connect and start having discussions. And there's lots of ways which you're perhaps already doing that in your event. And actually, something I think is missing. A lot of events are really good now at kind of morning runs.
yeah.
But running isn't for everybody. How about a morning walk? Most people like walks, and it's a great way to get your brain engaged for the day. Um,
And we
um,
and we know that walking and talking is a much easier way to have a conversation sometimes. So I talk to my kids when we go to the shop because eye contact isn't always the best way to kind of get the information that you necessarily want out of somebody or you need, or it's just a bit more of a relaxing. I really like the idea of a walk. We do a run and we do yoga, but we don't do a walk. I'm going to put that on my list.
Excellent, good, thank you. Someone either has a magician, an old work colleague at the event they use, and people still talk about how great he was to this day. Finding someone like that, which really brings people together and who is brilliant themselves, is a great way to carry on the kind of the legacy of that social engagement. Got time for one more question. I'm going to come to the one about. Actually, this one, what tools do we suggest we offer delegates for them to help them get the most out of networking, and an idea about hints and tips on how to network. So how can we train, if you like, or coach our delegates into networking? Adam, come to you
Yeah,
first.
I wait for Emma's voice. You can interrupt me anytime. Um, well, I think you have to train people. Really, it's not just let's hope that they understand what role they can play. But again, this is about how do they feel about entering that room. So again, across the spectrum of levels within an industry or a particular trade, what do we expect them to know? How can we integrate them? I also think when you're asking what is networking, are we just using the word? I always try to find a different phrase for it. The one I've come up with so far, which I'm not sure is a marketable phrase, but it's human vesting. We often hear about listening more, but actually, do you have any intentionality when you go networking? So this ends up being a problem that we now study. We do a lot of neuroscience and psychology around this particular point, and it's the attrition. So I think a lot of people have a problem with networking because it doesn't amount to much afterwards. So there has to be a change. It's been like this for forever. And if we really study on the outcomes, if we know what we want to achieve, then we can curate the room, we can get all the information up front. And this is another opportunity to talk about what we don't do in advance as well. So the know before you go. What are the protocols? What can I expect? Am I meant to be having fun or am I meant to be serious? What is the role of me in that environment? So I think as organizers, we can do a lot more prescriptively to explain what this session is about, why we put this component in place, why the morning, why the evening, and how is it meant to affect on the event. So are we sure about the outcomes? And therefore, then we can start talking to an audience about how to better place themselves in advance and what can we give them to think about. And again, tips, tricks, and the learnings that we have, that's how we teach programs about networking. It doesn't sound like there's actually that much room for it. But I think we've got about 10 hours of material now that we can go to schools, colleges, conferences, universities, corporates, you name it, and we can deliver depending on the audience age group and depending on the vertical they're in and depending on the types of people that we think we're going to have there. And of course, the array of brain types that we see from the neurodivergent to those that have been suffocating under pressure and those that are brand new to an audience.
Thank you. Emma, anything on the idea of training delegates to network or helping them that way?
I think I think there's a couple of things for me. I find it really useful if I've seen the attendee list in advance, because that helps me work out who do I want to see and actually who do I need to see. And that allows me to make a beeline for the people that I need to see first so that I kind of tick a few kind of conversations off my list. But also just makes me feel a little bit more comfortable in environments like that. And if your event has an event app, that's a really good way of doing that. I'm sure there are lots of other kind of softwarey tools. Yeah, I think I really like what Adam just said about kind of deciding how you're going to show up to something and deciding on working out your mindset. And I think you're right, as organizers, we need to maybe be saying, this activity is a fun activity, or this actually is a much more kind of. So yeah, I think we can help people in that a bit better than we do. Yeah, somebody's posted a really interesting picture, a really interesting question about icebreakers. I'm with you. Whoever it was that posted that, I'm absolutely with you on icebreakers. But I think there are some really simple things that you can do, like I've been to an event where you get a sticker and your sticker says something. So your sticker might say fish and you have to go and find your chips, or it might say your Starsky and you have to go and find your hutch. And so I think there are little things like that which don't need a fun fact about yourself. And increasingly people aren't up for sharing those facts. I have colleagues who do not want to talk about their personal life, and that's absolutely fine. I think it's the same in networking. I think sometimes those fun facts and icebreakers can be challenging for people.
Thank you very much. John, could we have the slides, please? We're running a little bit over time. Sorry about that, everyone, but it's Christmas. I hope you'll forgive me. So firstly, for those that don't know what is Evolve, Evolve is a community for those of us that are involved in the delivery of events within membership organizations, so working directly for membership organizations. Next year, we'll be running 16 events, 12 webinars, 2 live meetings, one of which is at the end of January, which is Evolve Live. tickets for that, or sales for that, close on the 22nd of January, a week before, and that will not be extended. So you have to register by that date. And two socials. We're also going to be doing something at the meeting show next year as well. Future options, perhaps a pin, some online engagement, mentorship programs, jobs, but all in all, bringing about a greater sense of community for those event professionals that work directly for associations. Next slide, please, John. Coming soon, we've got our January webinar, which is about demonstrating ROI to exhibitors, and this is a growing important topic. Exhibitors are really struggling. I find exhibitors are struggling to measure their own ROI, and I think we need to give them some help. And then, as I've already mentioned, the 30th of January, Evolve Live at Excel London. Please come. It's going to be the most amazing day of connection, content, and career focus. So do come. It's 199 plus VAT until 31st of December. Then it goes up £50, and then it closes 22nd of January, and that will be it. If you miss it, it won't be, you'll be missing the best event of the year. And the last slide, if you'd like to find out more about any of our speakers, we will be sending a follow-up email, and this is about the company I work for, which is Brighthelm, which is the event agency of associations. We're going to come to one last question, and we are extending. I'm sorry, I don't normally do this, but I want to make a special occasion because it's actually a really important question. Someone's just registered for the Evolve webinar demonstrating ROI to exhibitors. That's great, thank you. And actually, it's the last two questions. Does anyone here manage to do virtual networking anymore? Are we all over virtual networking, or actually what can we do to make that? Because virtual events they're not going anywhere. They are here to stay. Emma.
So we have hybrid. Our annual conference is hybrid. We have sort of fifth of our delegates are virtual. I don't know. I think it's incredibly hard to do good virtual networking. I don't know is the answer. One of the things that I'm working with our digital team for our conference is how can we ensure that our virtual attendees are involved in the things that go on outside of the session. So it's not really networking, it's not really social, but we're trialing doing things like getting our filming company to do a walk round of the exhibition and go and have some conversations. So that's still live streamed. It's still engaging our virtual audience. I don't know how we do good virtual networking. I think it's really, really hard. I'm really sorry. I wish I had some great answers to that, but I think it's hard.
And Adam, very quickly in 20 seconds.
I think if you were to run a couple of attendee samplers, just get a few people to attend so they start to become more familiar with each other. They could be short 20, 30-minute sessions, just do one or two of them. It gives people a chance to think about, who am I going to find there?
Thank you very much. Great stuff. Adam and Emma, thank you so much for your time today. I hope everyone at home, you'll give them a round of applause for their time. Thanks to John Richards, our event manager, and Izzy Allen, our marketing coordinator, who did a fantastic job of delivering this today for us. Thank you to our audience for attending. Please do complete the evaluation, which only takes 60 seconds. In fact, it's less than that, to be honest, and will pop up on your screen as you leave the webinar. That's really important for us because it helps us continue to provide a webinar program, and also a live event program that is relevant to the problems which you have. We'll send out the link to the recording tomorrow in case you missed it or want to re-watch anything. I've been Rob Evely. Have a wonderful Christmas and New Year break, and we will see you in January.